In this episode of The Business of E-commerce, I talk with Trent Dyrsmid about launching and scaling an Amazon wholesale business. This is The Business of E-commerce, episode 36. Welcome to The Business of E-commerce, the show that helps e-commerce retailers start, launch, and grow the e-commerce business. I'm your host, Charles Pileski. I'm here today with Trent Dyrsmid. Trent is the host of the Bright Ideas podcast. He launched an Amazon wholesale business, and he grew that business from 0 to $100K a month in just under 5 months. He then delegated himself completely out of the business in just under a year. I found this totally awesome and wanted to talk today a bit about how he did this and how he grew and launched his Amazon business. So hey, how you doing today?
Very well, Charles. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's great to have you. Definitely. How did I do with the last name? I know I was practicing.
You were close enough.
All right. I try. So I wanted to kind of talk to you a bit about the Amazon business. I love the story on how you kind of grew it and how long have you been running it for?
So we officially started the wholesale model in August of 2016. I had started in private label in April, but I grew that to about 25 to 30,000 a month, but I really wasn't making any money, and so I was basically floundering in private label until I interviewed a guy on my show and learned that the wholesale model even existed because I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. The show right before this, I was talking to another guy on Amazon that went from wholesale to private label and had the exact opposite experience. So it's interesting back to back like that. Two people, exact opposite experience with that. So what was not working for you in private label, or what happened there?
So the thing with private label is your product, you're making a bet that you're going to be smart enough to choose a product that has enough demand but not too much competition. And then you invest, you get your samples and you get your name, you get your big order and it gets shipped here and so forth. And so there's a lot of money that gets sunk in up front. And if you get it wrong, if you pick, like in my case, one of the products that I invested the most money in was a shock collar for dogs, because I wanted to get into it. I wasn't afraid of spending money on advertising, but I totally underestimated the amount of black hat that goes on. With false reviews and so forth, because back then you could still game the system. And so I was just spending on promotions and pay-per-click to try and get my sales rank and my product to get to the point where, it would sell well enough. And it wasn't the only product I had. I had some essential oil diffuser necklaces as well. But both of the product selections that I made weren't really that good. And so, 4 or 5 months in, I'm still not making any profit, and I was really, really frustrated and just didn't really want to do it anymore.
So you had the calls, I'll ship to FBA, and they just weren't moving.
Oh, they were moving, and eventually we did sell them all on eBay. So I did eventually get all my money back, but it took, quite a while.
Yeah, and you have to, and anything with private label is big money up front, so you have to take that money and, now it's that, it's not on your account anymore. It's sitting at Amazon essentially. So then you have to basically get that money, get those products back to cash. And that
Correct.
takes time.
And with wholesale, the risks are way, way, way lower. It's impossible to lose all your money on wholesale unless you're just an absolute moron, because the products that we source in wholesale, they're already selling.
Yep.
They already have a track record. They already have reviews. And all we're trying to do is enter into a relationship with a supplier to give us some level of certainty or ideally exclusivity for that product. And when that happens, you just have a gravy train of cash with very little risk. And that's what I really like about wholesale.
Okay, so when you say wholesale, just to define that, let's put a definition on exactly, who's the supplier and what are you doing with that product? How does that work?
So wholesale is simple. We are contacting U.S. manufacturers. We are buying products from those U.S. manufacturers with our money. They become, when we purchase them at wholesale, and then we ship them into Amazon, and they are sold at retail, and we make money on the spread.
Okay. And when we say you're buying, is it you're buying in bulk, buying one-offs, or how many at a time approximately?
It depends on the sales volume of the product. We have, like I'm looking out in the warehouse now, and I have pallets and pallets of this one particular brand because it's a really strong seller, and we go through the product like crazy. Other products are orders, like an initial order. When we place the first order, we call that the test order. It's usually $2,000 to $3,000 worth. And then once the test order proves that all the data that we got from Jungle Scout or Viral Launch, the tools that we use to analyze things, is actually accurate, then we'll order 2 months worth at a time, and that could be 10 or 20 grand.
Okay, so
It just depends on the sales volume of the product.
So when you you find a supplier, find a product that you do some research and say, okay, this is selling decently well on Amazon. Let's place a small test order and just see. So you spend a couple thousand, have it shipped to FBA, and check the sell-through?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And of course, we're having a conversation with the brand even before that test order, and they're signing a contract with us. In the beginning, we didn't ask any brands to sign contracts because we were new and we didn't have the track record. But now we've got lots of brands, lots of track record. And unless they're willing to sign a contract with us for some level of exclusivity, we won't purchase from them.
Oh, really? So when you say exclusivity on Amazon or online, what level are we talking? Am on Amazon?
We want them to say we're going to be the only seller or one of 2 sellers or one of 3 sellers, but they can't just keep accepting new sellers after they start selling to us.
Okay, so you're trying to find people before not the suppliers or the market saturated where you go on there on other buying options and there's 57 other people all selling the exact same product for, a slight loss. You're trying to actually get in on this early.
You're trying to find diamonds in the rough, and it's not easy to do, but it's not impossible to do. It's like anything else in business. I spent years in sales making cold calls before I was in this business. And like anyone in sales would know, you've got to make lots of cold calls to find a prospect to ultimately find a customer. We don't make cold calls per se. It's all done over email, but it's pretty much the same process. You have to turn over a lot of stones, knock on a lot of doors, whatever metaphor you'd like to use, to find the supplier that has the right combination of product sales velocity, not too many other sellers, having enough Amazon problems that they're in pain, and you come along as the doctor and say, well, hey, I know you're having this problem, and this problem. We can fix all those problems for you. We can clean everything up, and we can probably increase your sales velocity by taking advantage of the marketing things that we know how to do on Amazon. Is that something you're interested in? And when you find the supplier with the right combination of pain and velocity and all those things, they're still nodding their head up and down, and that's when we end up forming a relationship.
So you find suppliers that are already selling on Amazon but having issues with sell-through or some sort of issues.
Everybody's on Amazon's having issues.
Okay, so somebody who's already on Amazon, probably selling their own products but having some sort of issues, and say, hey, we can basically run this for you. We'll take the risk on of actually purchasing the product ahead of time because we know this will work as long as you give us the guarantee. You'll basically step aside and let us do this, and we'll be your Amazon arm, basically.
They don't have to step aside. A lot of times we'll share the buy box with them. If it's the manufacturer that's actually selling through their own Seller Central account, we don't ask them to step aside, and not at the beginning. But we have been successful in getting them to step aside later on as the relationship develops. Our largest account, actually, that's exactly what happened.
So what do they get out of doing the exclusive? What are you kind of giving to, like, if they say, hey, you'll be our retailer on Amazon, that's it. What are they getting from that?
So if a manufacturer is the sole seller of a product, or maybe they have other sellers, but they don't even know who they are. So let's go with they're the sole seller. If they're the sole seller, there's a lot of risk, because what if their account gets suspended? Then their sales velocity goes to zero, their sales ranks get crushed, and they might not be able to recover from that quickly, or it could be quite expensive for them to recover from that. Plus, they still have to manage their Amazon presence, and if that's not their core expertise, they're not going to do a very good job of it. In the case where they have a whole lot of other unknown sellers, in all likelihood, those sellers, because they're unknown, are violating MAP. That's causing a race to the bottom on price. That manufacturer's brick and mortar retailers, like let's say as an example, they're selling to Walmart, and Walmart is 50% of their sales, and MAP for their widget is $19.99. And thanks to some unknown jackasses on Amazon selling it at $17.99, Walmart is threatening to kill the account.
Yep.
how motivated do you think the CEO of that company is to solve that problem?
Got it.
Pretty motivated.
Yeah. Okay, so you're able to take a lot of the risk off their plate and basically say, we're going to, you're not going to be the only one on Amazon. I'm going to do this with you, but I'm going to be, do this well and not go on there and just try to, throw garbage on Amazon as fast as possible. We're actually trying to sell this product.
And we don't pitch ourselves as just an Amazon seller. We're a multi-channel e-commerce distribution company.
Okay.
So it's important that they understand that we're going to take them onto markets they might not be on currently.
Okay, so maybe even foreign
Walmart
markets as well. Walmart.
No, not so much foreign, not yet.
Okay.
Walmart, Jet, eBay are typically the other places that we'll go. I mean, there's a million markets you can be on. There's 20 or 30 of them, but most of them. I mean, Amazon is the dominant, obviously, by a mile.
Yep.
Walmart, Jet, and eBay are probably 8% of our total revenue. And then you can keep on adding more markets, but you're not going to hardly add any more sales. So I don't think it's worth it.
Yeah, I think I read as of this weekend, Amazon was around 50% of all online sales. It was Prime Day a few days ago. And yeah, somehow
they're pretty dominant.
Yeah, it's impressive. So, and as you go, there's like you said, Walmart, eBay, Jets, that sort of thing. But as you go to the other ones that we're both probably forgetting to mention right now, they really are it goes down fast. So there's a steep curve.
I mean, there's Sears, there's Rakuten, there's Overstock, and there's on and on and on. Yep. You could be on all of those, but we tested a few of them, and it just wasn't worth the effort.
Okay. And you're also selling through FBA, right? So you're actually shipping to Amazon, and they do the fulfillment. So that kind of takes a lot of the weight off your shoulders.
Correct. For the other markets, for Walmart, Jet, and eBay, we have to fulfill ourselves, but we've outsourced that to a 3PL.
Okay. So we were talking actually before the show, and you're physically sitting in a warehouse right now, your warehouse.
Yep.
And what is that like? So you recently purchased a building, and you're shipping product there. And what do you do from that facility?
Prep.
Okay.
So prep, the products arrive in pallets. They don't have any Amazon stickers on them. They may not be bundled yet. And then if you get, say, 3 pallets in the door, but Amazon requires you to send it to 6 different fulfillment centers, the handling and preparing of that product is called prep. So the product is in our warehouse for an average of 1.7 days to prep it, and then it goes right back out the door. Most of the time, my warehouse is near empty, and then all of a sudden it's full, and then 2 days later it's empty again.
And that's kind of the goal, right? To basically keep it just moving through the warehouse.
I like to see an empty warehouse because that means I don't have any money sitting on my floor.
Because if it's sitting in the warehouse, it's not doing anything in your warehouse, right?
Not helping me.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah, Amazon has some very strict labeling requirements and the whole packaging of sending an inbound FBA order. It's one of those things, right? When you go on FBA and you say, "Hey, I'm setting up an inbound order. Here's what's in it." They then come to you and say, "Here's how we're actually going to, need it shipped. Here's how you have to label it," and they give you some very strict instructions to follow.
Correct. And you don't have to do that yourselves. There are lots of companies around North America for you to outsource that to. They're called 3PLs or prep centers. But we can do it. We can do it at a lower cost, quite a bit lower cost than they would charge us. And that part of that is because we're in Boise, Idaho, where labor costs and real estate costs are relatively inexpensive. They're below average for the U.S. market as a whole. And so we're able to prep for about 10 cents a piece, whereas prep centers would charge us almost $1 a piece. So our costs would be quite a bit higher.
Yep. So yeah, there are 3PLs, and they the nice part in Boise, though, you're in a relatively central location to begin with, so you don't have to.
Sort of.
Relatively. I was talking to someone last week from doing this.
Could be better.
I was talking to someone last week in northern Maine, so it's all relative, right?
Yeah, all relative, exactly.
Yeah. And they're bringing stuff in from the West Coast to northern Maine and then shipping it back out. So,
and some of our suppliers, they will ship. We have long-standing relationships. They already know how to prep for Amazon, so some of them will send direct to Amazon for us. So not everything makes it here.
Okay, yeah, because some folks, they seem to be a little more savvy with knowing the Amazon requirements, and they'll follow them. Because the worst thing, you don't want them to send in a shipment and have it rejected and.
No, that's my problem.
Yeah, it goes into some limbo at Amazon of what is all this product basically.
Yeah, we've never had that happen, so I can't speak from firsthand experience. I'm not personally involved in prep and shipping. So if I called Janine in here, maybe she would say, well, actually, there was a time, but I just don't know what it is.
How many people do you have working in the warehouse?
So we have 4 full-time employees upstairs, and then we have another 4 people who work in the warehouse that are all part-time.
Very cool. Okay, so products come in, you find these suppliers, shipping the products. What's next? So you get the products to FBA. How many products do you currently have listed in Amazon, approximately?
100,
Okay.
maybe more. I don't know. I haven't looked lately.
Yep. So once you get them there, what do you do from there?
Once they're in Amazon?
Once they're at FBA, to actually now to get the listings actually performing, right? So let's say, I know you said you were in private label for a shot collar, but let's say there's a shot collar you're trying to sell.
Yeah, so keep in mind the whole basis of Amazon is to a certain degree the listings are already performing. That's what caused us to want to source the product to begin with. So even if we didn't do anything, they're all going to sell. What we typically will do, though, is we go through a listing optimization process. We go through a pay-per-click management process. So basically, optimization and advertising. We are looking for ways to increase the conversion rate of the product listing and ultimately increase its sales velocity so as to improve its sales rank.
Okay. So you go through and you're targeting listings and products that are already doing decently well. So you're not going through and saying, let's find, out of whatever category, the bottom of the worst of the 100. You're trying to find something that's actually doing reasonably well, and you can get in there and just kind of help move product.
Correct.
Okay. So then how do you actually compete for the buy box? Let's say if the manufacturer is already, in there and doing okay.
So we wouldn't purchase a product unless we knew we were going to be the low price seller, typically at MAP. And in the case where, let's say, a manufacturer is the sole seller and MAP is $19.99, we're going to be at $19.99. So they're going to get half the sales and we're going to get half the sales. If at some point in the future we can demonstrate reasons for them to give us the entire buyer box, all we tell them to do is raise their price to $24.99 and they won't see the buy box and we'll get it all.
Yep. Well, and if, let's say the manufacturer wasn't doing that well and they weren't doing customer service as well, like getting back on support, having some sort of shipping issues, you're going to start to appear in the buy box more often, right?
We are, because their seller rating will go down. And so even if our prices are the same, we'll get a larger share of the buy box. Plus, if we're running pay-per-click ads and they're not, we'll also get a larger share of the buy box.
Okay, so you're able to go in there and really start basically dominating the listing at that point.
That's the goal.
Okay.
It doesn't always happen, but that's definitely the goal.
Yeah. What sort of things stop that from happening?
Just others, like across our entire portfolio, our win rate is generally about 65%. Sometimes it's up as high as 70. So the things that stop it is if there are others, like let's say we're into a situation where the manufacturer has 4 authorized sellers and we're one of them and everyone's at the same price. Well, we're only going to get a quarter of the buy box unless we're running pay-per-click and nobody else is, or our seller rating's a little bit better than the other guys. Maybe we'll get up to 30%. But in the case of where there's 4 sellers all at MAP, we're not going to get 60%. Okay. It's just not going to ever happen.
Yep.
But that's okay because we made the decision to invest in that product on the assumption that we would only get 25% of the buy box.
Got it. So you might not have invested as much inventory in that particular item.
It all depends on the sales velocity, because if the product is moving 3,000 units a day, 25% of 3,000 units is I need a lot of inventory.
Yep.
So this goes back to the contract that I talked about. Is if we're looking at a listing for a product and there are 3 sellers that are on it and we count ourselves as being the 4th, we would only buy it if they're willing to sign a contract with us that says there'll never be a 5th.
Okay, so you're getting that contract, so you know there won't be a 5th. You know up front the sell-through, so you know this many units per day. There's only going to be 4 of us, at most. So you're going to sell this many. You can basically assume you'll sell X many per day, and you know that up front. So you know if you're putting, how much are we talking in on a product? Like, how much are we talking you would invest, and how quickly would you expect that return on that?
So it's impossible to give you an answer because it's different with every single product. I will tell you that our initial orders are typically between $2,000 and $3,000 for a test order.
And
We would
that's
anticipate
for one order, one SKU.
one order, one SKU. That we would anticipate that we'd burn through that in 2 weeks or less.
Okay.
That then gives us the data, the hard data. Plus, now we have a contract in our hands to go and buy 60 days worth. And so 60 days worth might be, like I say, might be 15 grand, might be 20 grand. It just depends.
So, because then you start feeling more comfortable of knowing, okay, we did a test. We did our 2-week test. We know we spent, let's say, 2,000. We got that 2,000 back in 2 weeks. Now we can rent this up and start going from there.
Yep.
Okay. Do you always try to stay at the 60-day mark, or do you try to go more aggressive as you go?
No, we don't. One of the key things that you're looking for in any business that has inventory is inventory turns. The faster you can turn your inventory, the greater your return on investment will be in a calendar year. Yep. The only reason, we used to do 30 days worth of inventory, but as the number of products in our portfolio increased, the work involved in reorders got to be too much. So then there's only two ways to solve that. One, I can hire another person, which adds to my overhead, or I can make larger orders and make them less often, and that was the more economical solution.
So right now, 60 days is your sweet spot of, not because if you're doing 30-day orders, essentially once one order gets FBA, you need to be starting your next order at that point. Because by the time the manufacturer, you make the order, they ship it to you, you ship it to FBA. FBA has a whole
waiting list.
Yes, of getting it in. So what's that?
It's like a popular bar. There's a lineup at the door.
Yeah, it really, and it takes a while, right? What's that? What does it actually take? Let's say to get it from manufacturer X to Boise to FBA and then actually selling. Like, what does that time frame look like?
Again, I'm not personally involved in that anymore, but I would guess it's anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. So no, actually, that's a good point. What part are you personally involved in? Because I know you've done a lot with actually delegation and have a lot of folks kind of helping with this. So
I'm not personally involved in any day-to-day operations anymore at all.
Okay.
Because I have more than one business. So I sit down here and I run my other businesses. Now, we do have a morning huddle most mornings, and I participate in that. So I'm up there for about 10 minutes each day. And really all I'm doing is listening and asking questions.
Okay. And then day-to-day, you're working on the other business at this point, or what is your role then at that point, other than?
Nothing.
Okay. Wow.
Absolutely nothing. I have no active role. I don't even because I have no active role, I'm also not on payroll for that company either.
Interesting. Okay. Huh. I like that. So how did you do that?
Magic. No.
Yeah. So what is your magic to make that?
So I have an acronym that I created actually just in the last week. It's called CTODD. CTODD.
CTODD. Let's write that down. All right.
As far as I know, nobody else has used this acronym before, so I'm hereby taking ownership.
So the CTODD.
And this is for any CEO. I believe that this is the role of a CEO, is to create, as in come up with the idea, test, make sure it works, optimize, document, and delegate. I'm really, really good at documenting and delegating.
Create,
so documenting
test, optimize, document, delegate.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
So documenting is creating standard operating procedures, basically checklists for everything that we do. And we have, just shy of 100 SOPs. I don't know, maybe it's like 80 in our business right now. And then we hire staff to use those standard operating procedures to do the thing the things that they have to do on a day-to-day basis. And having those procedures in place ensures that all the things that need to be done get done exactly the same way every single time, which means that I'm not so dependent upon being able to hire geniuses, even though my staff is very talented. But even me, if I don't do something regularly, I'll forget how to do it, and I might do it differently the next time. Like if you were working at McDonald's and you're the burger flipper, your boss doesn't say flip the burger when you think it's ready. He says flip the burger when the light comes on, because It's the exact same amount of time every single time. When you buy a McDonald's franchise or any other franchise, they give you a whole book of standard operating procedures. So in my business, in my prior business, I did the same thing. I read the E-Myth. by Michael Gerber at the very beginning of that business and became an evangelist for having standard operating procedures. It's one of the reasons why I was able to sell that business for $1.2 million was because it ran without me. And so any business that I run, I don't actually want to do anything on a day-to-day basis on an ongoing basis. It's just not interesting to me. I'm an entrepreneur. I have ADD. I like starting new things. So in order to put myself in a position to be able to do that, I need to create, test, optimize, document, and delegate.
So now I get it on kind of there's some things in the business obviously that are a bit simpler, but then there's some other things that seem a lot more complicated and kind of this like high level, like finding a new manufacturer. And that process feels like something a lot of entrepreneurs would keep close to them.
That was the first thing I delegated.
Really? Okay. So
that's why we were able to get to $100,000 a month within 5 months.
Okay. So
I turned all of that into a system that was run by virtual assistants in the Philippines for $3 an hour.
Really? So how did you do that? Because that one right there feels like something that a lot of people would have a very hard time with.
So it breaks down into two parts. First of all, it's generating the lead. What is a company that we would want to go after? That is strictly a math equation. You have all this data on Amazon, you suck it all out of Amazon and put it into spreadsheets, and it boils down to very simple math. Does the product generate enough potential profit per month for us to want to carry it? Once that happens, then there's the whole process of taking all of those leads that you generate, and there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them every week, and figuring out, well, who do we need to reach out to, and sending an email and all that. And VAs do all of that stuff. We use some software to automate portions of it. And then, and only then, a conversation may or may not occur. That is not handled by a VA. In the first 5 months in the business, I was the guy handling all of those conversations. And most of them turned out where we didn't place an order, we didn't get an account approved, but enough of them turned out positively that we grew as fast as we did. And the very first person I hired, actually, was it the first or the second? Second. So the first person we hired was a special projects person, because as our revenue scaled, there just became all this stuff that needed to be done. And if I was going to be doing that stuff, then I wasn't going to be sourcing, which would slow down our growth rate, and I didn't want that to happen. So, but by maybe month 6 or so, I hired a full-time guy who had no sourcing experience whatsoever, not in the wholesale model. He had sourced products from China before, which is totally different than this. And it took him probably 3 or 4 months to kind of really come up to speed. I think it took him a couple of months to even land his first account. But he was operating because efficiently from the get-go. There's some phone skills that he needed to develop. But because we had all the standard operating procedures in place, between him and Laura, I was now completely out of sourcing. I didn't have to do anything. I oversaw, and I did some joint calls and did some training, in the beginning to supplement the standard operating procedures. But it got to the point where, I just didn't need to be involved anymore.
So even that negotiation with the manufacturer, you're able to kind of systematize.
Yep.
Okay.
I don't do it. He does it. I don't do it. He
Okay.
completely replaced me because of the SOPs. Obviously, the guy has some skills. I mean, you can't just take anybody and plug them into a role. You still have to have the right seats on the right bums on the bus.
Yep. Because it's the right role for people to begin with, right? You need obviously someone that's relatively extroverted to do that sort of thing.
Well, the funny thing with this guy is he's not.
Oh, okay.
He's the
Or maybe you
shyest,
don't.
quietest dude ever.
Yep.
But he, through the training and the procedures, was able to develop the talking points necessary to be able to convince a manufacturer to go with us. And I mean, some of our largest accounts, he won them, not me.
Okay, so then on a day-to-day, they're able to start generating more accounts, talking to more suppliers, and then the machine just starts working from there.
It does.
Wow, this is eMyth right here in the works, actually happening in real life. Wow, so that's allowed you to you have a second business you started to kind of spin off from. You now have the time to basically sit downstairs, the warehouse is upstairs, and let this business run on its own?
Yeah, so I have a couple other businesses. So I have my blog and podcast, which I don't sell any training courses. I do the podcast simply because I'm it allows me to network with other people in the industry. It allows me to learn new things, and one of those relationships created a whole new business. So there's a guy who sells a training course, and after I interviewed him, he gave me access to his training course. So technically, we were students. And when we had all the success that we had, he was planning a conference for his existing student base. And he said, would you be interested in coming and talking at the conference to explain how you use standard operating procedures, or SOPs for short, to scale your business up so quickly? And I said, yeah, sure, I'll do that. And so when I did my talk, at the beginning of it, I said, hey, everybody, take good notes, because I don't have anything for sale. I'm just going to explain to you this thing that I built. And it was moderately technical, and you'd have to be a pretty bright cookie to sit there, take notes for an hour, and be able to build everything that I built, because it took me more than an hour to build it, obviously. And at the conclusion of my speech, quite a large portion of the audience kind of ran up to the stage, and they all were basically saying the same, or they were going to the microphones. And the question over and over was, would you sell us a copy of your standard operating procedures? And I hadn't considered doing that, but I was like, well, I guess we could. And so we did that as a test, and it went exceedingly well. And in the first 6 months, we sold almost $1 million worth of these standard operating procedures. It's now called WEBS, stands for Wholesale eCommerce Business Systems. So that's a whole nother business, and we've now created a software application to support the WEBS product so that we can do even more with it. So that's business number 2. You could call my blog business number 3, but it does make money on its own. So I guess that's business number 3. And then business number 4, I'm starting a non-Amazon e-commerce business in the motorsports niche called the National Motorsports Owners Association. And that's just because I like to have diversified streams of income. What happens if our Amazon account got suspended, which it never has, and we've never come close. But the fewer things that you control in your business, the more risk that you have. And so I like to try and be able to eliminate as much risk from my business as I can. And so that's why I'm starting a non-Amazon business. And I think that it will hopefully go on to eclipse the revenue and the profits of our Amazon business.
So the non-Amazon business, that's going to be running your own site, your own domain, like a Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, that sort of thing. And then you're going to promote that as its own standalone store, right?
Yep.
Okay. And then the SOPs, you're selling those as just a one-time download? So other retailers come to you. Are these folks that have Amazon businesses or want to have Amazon businesses?
Yeah, they're specifically for people in the Amazon wholesale space who want to be in that space or are in that space. Okay. And 400 and some people have bought these things so far, and I've seen some pretty awesome transformational results, because not everybody's mind works like mine does. I have a special skill for developing SOPs in such a ways that it makes delegating really, really easy. And so there was a lot of writing that I did and a lot of documentation, and it's intimidating for someone to start with just like a blank sheet of paper and think, okay, write 69 SOPs for every area of your business. Like, that would take a long, long time. It took us well over a year, and we're still adding more and adjusting the ones we have and improving them. I mean, it's a never-ending process. So it makes sense for most people to just buy that as opposed to create it. And I think maybe I forgot part of your question, but to the best of my recollection, that was the answer.
How much do you sell them for, out of curiosity?
$2,500.
Okay, so $2,500, and somebody who, let's say let's just say you have an Amazon business and it's doing okay, but you hear this and you want to kind of start delegating some of the work or just knowing some parts you can do to grow the business. $2,500, they get a bunch of PDFs, and they're able to.
No, it's not a bunch of PDFs.
Okay.
It lives. They also have to pay the $15 per user. At the time of this recording, it is $15 per user per month. They have to pay that for access to the software tool. There's no
Okay.
PDFs. Everything lives in the software. And our Zapier integration is just about done. So the idea here is because you could write SOPs in a Google Doc, but then they don't do anything. Like you can look at them and they can look at you, but they don't do anything. You can't. Whereas you need the ability to delegate the entire checklist or maybe a portion of the checklist to a person or persons on your team. You need to be able to assign a due date. You need to get email alerts if the due date is missed. If someone comments on it, you need to get email alerts. Or through Zapier, maybe when you put a check in this checkbox in the checklist in the workflow, maybe that triggers an action in your HubSpot CRM application and changes a field. All of these things to increase efficiency, save time, and reduce errors. That's why we've moved it into our own software application, so that because even Zaps are kind of complicated for most people, and so we're trying to make it so they don't have to make Zaps. We're trying to make it so that we hard code integrations that we use ourselves between the various applications that we use in our business, all to increase efficiency, reduce errors, and save time.
Okay. So when you said SOP, I'm picturing like you come in and hand like a book and you put it down on the desk and then you leave.
There's no book.
Okay, so there's no book.
There's
It's
no
actually
book.
like a living
It's a software
thing.
application.
Okay, so it's an application that actually like a workflow automation application, and not just a static
Correct.
manual of here it is.
Correct.
Go have a
You log into it and click
Okay.
stuff and type stuff and do stuff.
Okay. See, I was picturing something I was picturing literally a manual that goes on a shelf. So this is so
God,
then
no.
you're saying you click things and that actually like takes you to some action, and then checkbox, and that'll fire off something over here that labels something is done so someone else can pick it up.
Correct.
Got it. Okay, very cool.
So it allows for collaboration on any given workflow. You can collaborate, you can talk to each other, you can have assigned tasks, you can make comments, it all triggers emails, and all sorts of good things happen. We just scratch our own itch. This is all stuff that we needed to use to make our business more profitable. And so that's what I've built.
Did this start in was the evolution, did it begin like as a text document and then it came to this?
It began as a Google Doc.
Okay.
Until I realized that wasn't going to meet all the requirements that we had. And then I found somebody else's software application to put it in. And that worked well for us. But when we turned it into a product for use by others, we hit some limitations that caused some support issues. And so then I realized that, well, if I was to make my own software application, I would be able to eliminate some of these bottlenecks that are causing customers issues, and we could make it even more capable. And so that's why we decided to do it.
Okay. And the nice part too is by being a living type thing, it you're able to update it. So I was in an application. It was actually a SaaS application the other day, and needed something, so I'm going through the help section. I find the exact article. I'm like, oh, this is exactly what I need. I'm going through the steps, and I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, I can't follow these steps. And I'm looking at the screenshots, and I realized, oh, this is from like a previous version, and they haven't updated this. So now it's like this like frozen old version. It's exactly what I want. It's not helping me. So then I actually have to email the support and say, oh yeah, that's from, 2016. We've updated that since. I'm like, oh, okay. So, so this is something you're able to then update, and when Amazon changes whatever, you're able to evolve with that.
Yep.
Very cool. Okay, so is that on a separate site, or what's that site called?
It's not live as of this recording. It will live at flowster.app.
Flowster.app. Okay, very cool.
And if you go there now, there is a home page, but you can't buy anything. You can't sign up yet. We're in the middle. It probably won't be available to the public until either late August or early September.
Okay, so soon this is happening.
Yeah, we're going through internal testing, then we're going through beta testing with our existing customers who bought the product on the other platform, and we want to make sure that by the time it's available that it's working flawlessly.
Are you still selling the product on the old platform?
Nope.
Oh, wow. Okay, so you're cutting and taking all new pre-orders on the new one.
Yep.
Very cool. Has this kind of helped you feel kind of grow the original business, or is it, is the original business its own thing and it just goes without you and you?
The Amazon business is a standalone business. The software company will be a standalone business. My next e-commerce brand will be a standalone business. We create a new legal entity every time we create a new business, so they don't have anything to do with each other. They have a separate set of books, the whole works.
Very cool. When you say we, are you a co-founder, or what's the?
In the software company, I'm the founder, and I have a co-founder because I don't know how to make software.
Okay. So you went out and so you had the SOPs, you were already doing this, had customers, had people interested, and then you said, hey, I'm already doing this, but I want to make it better. I have customers, I have interest in this, but instead of going out and hiring a dev shop for 8 months, you actually found a co-founder to say, let's build this together and use my existing customers to jumpstart this product, the new product.
Correct. Fortunately for me, one of my very good friends is a software guy. He'd already sold his software company. I was his roommate when he started it, so I watched him go through the whole process. I watched him interact with the co-founder he had in that software company. When things started to get rough, I got to see how he responded. So I know a lot about this individual. We've been friends for a decade. And I called him up and I said, hey, this is what I want to build. Are you interested? And he was like, hell yeah.
That's cool too, because having that interest already, I feel like a lot of, you hear this all the time, non-software folks looking for a technical co-founder, but they have an idea and they need it built and then we'll go off and sell it. But this sounds the opposite. Like you basically already sold it, but now you just need someone to actually make the product, something you can.
I mean, I sold almost $1 million of it and I'm expecting to sell many millions more. So it was a no-brainer of a decision to invest the money to create the software platform.
Yeah, that's probably a much not as tough of a sell to finding a co-founder and saying, I've already sold $1 million, want to help me sell more. And versus saying, I have an idea, maybe we'll sell $1 million, but you knew, you tested it. And it sounds like that's kind of a theme what you do, right? You test and ahead of time. We sold $1 million.
CTODD.
Yeah, okay, I like the CTODD. We need needs to roll off the tongue a little easier, but I like where you're going with that.
CTOD. It's the best I've been able to come up with. It's on my whiteboard. It's not eloquent by any stretch. Maybe I'll be able to come up with a better version. I only came up with it the other day in another conversation with somebody.
Very cool. Okay, I like that. So now, let's say, last thing, if somebody is sitting out there today, maybe they have an Amazon business or they want to start it, they were doing, maybe it was private label, maybe it was retail arbitrage, something else, but they want to get into wholesaling. What would you kind of recommend people as first steps do or don't do?
The most important thing to do, I mean, gosh, that's such a loaded question.
Yeah,
but I
give you a lot of room there to go, a lot of different places.
I mean, how long do you want me to talk for? But it all starts with product sourcing. In order to be successful in wholesale, you need wholesale accounts. To get wholesale accounts, you can send emails, make phone calls, go to trade shows. That's probably it. So pick one, pick two, pick three, but you need to do a lot of it. Whatever your particular method is, like we send hundreds and hundreds of emails every single week. And then the guy, Jared on my team who sources, he's on the phone all the time because people were sending the emails to, or they're sending price lists, and then we start negotiations and we talk about the contracts. So there's lots of communication that happens. And then we haven't been using trade shows a lot, but I literally just did a pre-interview for my own podcast with a guy who's having some success with trade shows. And so I'm probably going to revisit. I'm probably going to send myself to another trade show in the relatively near future to test a couple of new strategies to see if that would work for us as well.
I like that. I'm taking notes here. I feel like a lot of people, they think once they find a supplier, they find somebody, they find a product, that will be it. Now they're just going to go and it'll all be.
Yeah. You need to be finding new accounts all the time because there's this thing called account attrition. You won't keep them all forever. If people want a more detailed explanation of my product sourcing strategy, if they just go to breadideas.co/213, that is a.
All right, we'll link to that.
That is probably the most popular podcast episode I've ever produced, where I explain the strategy in quite a lot of detail. Just know in advance that because I'm an automations nerd, it's a bit technical at spots. I mean, conceptually it's easy, but to go and try and build it for the average bear, while not impossible, because I built it and I don't write code, it's a little bit complicated.
Yep, the automation on actually finding suppliers, it's that complicated?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
Not like ridiculously so, but it is the area where people struggle the most. And it's the biggest problem that my web's product solves. And it's the biggest reason why people buy the web's product is to be able to source more. Because if you don't source anything, you don't have any revenue. Nothing else really matters at that point in time if you don't have any revenue.
And if you can't source the right products, because the other thing you see a lot of folks doing is they go to some supplier that everyone goes to, or they go online and search directories of wholesale suppliers and just... you see that all the time.
That's not going to work.
Yeah, and they always say, no, that's not what I want to do. And they're like, yeah, but I need a supplier. And they're like, but that's where the work is. And finding those those suppliers, building a relationship, that's the work.
It's the hardest part of our business, by far. By far the hardest part of our business. Everything else after that is a piece of cake.
Yep. So I like that. If you do that part right, then it's a piece of cake.
Yep.
All right. I like it. I think that's a good place to leave it right there.
Okay.
So if folks want to kind of find more about you, what are some other good Bright Ideas podcasts? What else?
Yeah, I guess I should have worn my t-shirt. It says brightideas.co. That is the single best place to go to learn more about me.
Awesome. We'll definitely link to that in the show notes. So thank you very much for coming on today.
Yeah, no problem. It was a pleasure to be here.